Today, we're talking all about retractable undercarriage aircraft, the risks of landing gear-related accidents, and how to avoid them, as well as a recap on my recent trip to Broome. All that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Good morning, 7614, 95 Mallow 7 POB with altitude.
Coordinating, Halen, I'm running bank power, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there.
Stand by star 9000, 1013, KFI 25.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 163 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. A podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, my name's Trent Robinson, I'm your host and thank you for joining me. Well, I'm back in Darwin after a great week away in Broome and working with the team at Broome Aviation, Horizontal Falls, and also popped in to visit the guys at Air Kimberley. Much like Darwin, it's had a weird wet season so far. It's green, but not the usual lush green. Bit of standing water around, but certainly hot days, hot sun. A couple of storms and some nice overnight showers. A few ones around the daytime, the late afternoon, but nothing huge. But most importantly, it didn't stop the flying schedule that we had to squeeze into the week, which was a good thing. It all started with a great flight out with Air North on the E-Jet. Really love the aeroplane, 2x2 seating, nice and comfy. We went via Kununurra as the usual route from Darwin there to Broome. And much to my surprise, Captain Nick Salamito is my very first IPC in Darwin when I got back into flight training after care flight. And he even remembered it was invoice number 1. And FO Marcus, formerly a Hardy's pilot, so it was great to catch up with them really quickly. And look, the purpose of the trip was primarily to work with the new head of flying ops at Broome Av, which is Nigel Keats, and really just looking into the training manual, understanding the Part 119 training and checking requirements, OPCs, flight reviews, as well as upgrading his existing Grade 3 training endorsement to add on to that design feature and adding on the single engine class, which should have been there already with his Grade 3. So, yeah, look, it all went really well. The process was really well received and totally changed the perspective with really the standards that we're looking for, which should be enforced with all pilots aiming for. And, it was really good fun. Got a lot out of it. Did some great flying. Along with that was a couple of 404 Titan OPCs. Had a great team discussion with all the guys with some bits and pieces I'll talk about later on in another episode. And a great dinner out at the Spinifex Brewery, which is a really great spot where the Cable Beach Camels stop off on the way back for the kids. And yeah, just a really good experience working with everyone. So big thanks to Nigel, Lisa, Kylie and the team, and you, Mariah. All right. Thank you everyone for having me, and really look forward to the next trip and working remotely with Nigel over the coming months. Also talking about the Part 119 stuff, I popped into Air Kimberley and had a chat with Flynn and Ollie. Flynn's just taking over as HOFO and was literally just done his interview when I went and caught up with him, with the head of training coming up later in the week. So hope that all went well, mate. And just to see how we can help them with all the requirements that they're doing and understand the legislation and what needs to happen to look after their fleet and the size of the company. And then finally, over to Horry Falls, quick meeting with Adam and Ben, catch up with them. Normally try and catch them here in Darwin. Their overall branching company also looks after Outback Spirit here in Darwin. And it was good to catch up with them. And Adam and I have been talking online for a long time, but keep missing each other, but finally caught up. And then got on to the flight instructor proficiency check for Izzy. So I did Izzy's initial rating about a year ago over at Outback Spirit in their caravan. And Izzy's been doing a fantastic job with the training on the floats. And it was a great opportunity for me to get in the caravan on floats this time instead of the solid landing gear, and do some general handling before heading out to Roebuck Bay and then conducting some water work just south of the centre line and trying to avoid landing on the green turtles, which kept popping their heads up as we're coming into land. So that was just fantastic. Loving flying around the Broome area. There's dugongs, manta rays, and the turtles. Didn't see any sharks or anything else, but it was just beautiful conditions. I just love my passion for the ocean and the water, as I've mentioned before, and the world that is opening up to me since I started getting into seaplanes with Dan and the Buccaneer and then the Mallard. Did the Piper Cub on the floats, which then allowed me to do the flying in the caravan last week. So cannot recommend it enough. Kudos to Horizontal Falls. They have also got a scholarship program where they have been taking on brand new float pilots with a longer ICAS program, obviously. But Izzy's doing a fantastic job there. And, it was really great to do that flying. And sadly, it all eventually had to come to an end and back to Darwin on the Brasilia this time, and none other than Captain Gregory Chow, who I used to work with at Careflight. It was great to catch up with him. And FO Dominique, who I met her at the wet season seminar, and her career is progressing along very nicely also. So a great trip, great meeting new faces, catching up with old ones as always. And it is just a reminder just how awesome our aviation community is and the work we all get to do as instructors to see others and then they become trainers and teaching other younger pilots. It's just what it's all about, and spreading the knowledge and the information out there. So, look, I was trying to work out what to talk about, and I guess the subject kind of got put in my face a little bit because I was teaching design feature training endorsement with Nigel, as I mentioned, and focusing on the undercarriage retractable, both in the 404 and the 210. And then, of course, we had the other side of the fence where flying the caravan on floats, the stakes are reversed. We've got to be absolutely certain that the gear is up for a water landing.
Gear is up for water landing.
Water rudders.
Gear up for water landing. Acknowledged.
Acknowledged.
All right, so that's one of the enunciators there in the caravan. And then a totally different male voice for gear down for land landing. And, totally needs to be something you're very, very conscious of. Just the other week in Bali, a Twin Otter did a wheels up landing on the runway. Again, probably just so used to doing water landings all the time, probably don't land on a solid runway very often. It can happen to anybody, as it did whilst I was in Broome. I got a phone call that the 210 I used, Extra Golf Juliet, sadly had a gear up landing accident. Now, the details and the reason behind it all still all unknown, and I'm not going to go into that right now. It's all way too fresh, and as always, we wait to find out the details of things. But it truly does serve as a reminder of just how critical gear awareness is. Now, just before I get into the rest of the episode, this is naturally going to cause me some issues with my GA transition course training delivery, and I need to have a bit of time to work on a solution and a replacement 210, which I have found, and not so much negotiations, but just insurance checks and all that sort of thing are underway. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there won't be any major delays, although there will have to be some adjustments potentially. The alternative is, whilst it takes time to repair the aircraft, which could be 3 to 6 months, depending on the damage and time to source parts, is I do have the 206 available. And whilst that's not normally the preferred option for operators, because they like to have the prof check done on the 210, it is doable. And I will address that with the local operators and make sure they're all happy with that process. And I can advise each of you individually. So without dragging things on too long, unfortunately the 210 is just out of action at the moment. I don't know when it's going to be back yet, but we'll keep an eye on that as soon as possible. But for those already booked in, I've emailed some of you already, and look for further updates on me once I work through a replacement. For those that have inquired about the course, this is why I haven't replied to you yet, but I will this week just to let you know what's going on. And I'm just going to hold off on those bookings for the time being, unless you're happy enough to jump in the 206, in which case it's no problem. It's a fantastic machine, and I can take care of bookings and that. But yeah, sad news, but hopefully Extra Golf Juliet will be back in the air very, very soon in the not too distant future. So let's just have a look at some ideas and explore how pilots can prevent these kind of incidents from happening or accidents. And, the old saying of there's those that have and those that will. All right, but ideally, you want to ensure that we never fall victim to a gear-related mishap other than when it's just completely unavoidable. All right, so landing gear accidents, like I said, but they are nothing new. All right, gear up landing, wheels up landing, a gutser, grease job, forgetful arrival, the ultimate short field landing, a checkerbook landing. All right, it's an expensive activity. It can happen more often than they should, usually due to distraction, task saturation, or just simple complacency. All right, so some common scenarios can include forgetting to extend the gear before landing as the obvious one, due to being distracted or rushing the approach. All right, we had a situation not long ago where a pilot had the gear down. They then raised it to try and speed things up to help another aircraft with their arrival. And because they'd already gone through the checklist, they just forgot and weren't conscious enough to redeploy the gear again. All right. Of course, there's the whole thing with the gear not locking down properly, either a mechanical issue or an incomplete extension cycle, incorrect positioning of the gear lever. I am constantly reinforcing, and you've heard this before if you've been a listener of the podcast and follow me on Instagram, that gear lever is simply that. It's just a lever. It doesn't mean anything. It's got to be the confirmation of the lights, the indications, the mirror checks, having a wheel outside the window or in the engine nacelle mirror, whatever it is that you have fitted to your aircraft, some other pole or something else that's showing that the gear is down and locked. Because unless that's there, the lever means nothing. All right, we might have incorrect visual or instrumentation confirmation of a gear position. It is possible that you might have a false indication that the gear is down and locked, although that is very, very rare. All right. Or the final one really is that we misidentify our landing surface. So for an amphibious aircraft, leading to the wrong gear configuration for the land or the water. We have gear warnings, we have lights, we have sirens, alarms, horns, all sorts of indicators that can tell us that the gear is not fitted. But if this isn't serviceable, that's another problem. All right, so the 210, one of the most common aircraft you're going to be flying when you start, press and hold the gear light, just half press it, and the gear warning will sound. If that's not coming over the speaker properly, then it probably needs fixing, it needs attending to, because it's not going to work. You're not going to hear it, even if it's faint. The one time that you do need it to try and stop you having a gear failure or a gear up landing is when it's not working properly and you wish you would have got it fixed in the first place. All right, so it's quite common that pilots have flown entire approaches without realizing the gear is still up until that horrible sinking realization as they settle onto the runway with that horrific, unexpected scraping sound. So how do we confirm that gear position? Well, I just mentioned a few of them there, but there are several layers of the verification process you want to go through and build into your routine. First of all, obviously, is any gear limitations before we put the gear down. Once the gear is deployed, we want to make sure that the indicator lights are down. So mostly they have a 3 green light system. They might have a single green, or they have the words gear down like the Mooney does. All right, if you don't see those indications before landing, do not assume that the gear is down and it's just a bulb failure. All right, light bulbs can fail, sure, but we need to go and check everything and make sure it's the case. All right, we want to have a verbal checklist. So we want to do the gear down, 3 green confirmed, or again, whatever is applicable, as part of your approach checklist. So when we do our bum fish or pre-landing checks, that needs to be done. Not just put the gear down and say gear down. That's not what gear down is. You need to make sure the indications are there and don't just run the rest of the checklist and then come back to it either. Yeah, asking for trouble. It doesn't save any time. Just wait. All right, physical checks. Some aircraft allow for visual confirmation via the mirror, as I said. Little cockpit floor window. So in the Mallard, I've got the gear doors I can see through a little porthole. or when they're closed, and also a nose wheel position indicator. All right. And making sure that the gear lever is in the right spot. It's locked. Make sure if it's latches or it might come down and then flick to a neutral position, like in the Chieftain and Navajo, then make sure that that's all done as well. Whatever works for your aircraft. All right. Of course, we've got our puff checks on final, and this is our ultimate final check. So this isn't the time to put the gear down. This is the time to confirm everything is set and where it is. And then once that's done, it's all sorted. If you've done your proper pre-landing checks and ensured that the undercarriage is down and all the lights, indicators, and mirrors are done, then all we're doing on the puff check on final is just that the gear down and the green light is still there. All right. If it's not working, of course, we've got ATC. We can do flybys to see if the gear is out or not. Can't tell if the gear is locked. So that's always going to be up to your discretion. But make sure that the aircraft is configured for your landing. And as we said, for amphibious aircraft, we want to make sure that the gear is up for the water landings. Now that's the main gear and the front wheels, not really nose wheels, but the gear at the front. Want to make sure that they are retracted or extended as appropriate for the land, up for the water landing. The gear being down for water landings is just going to grab and it will flip the aircraft almost instantly. If you haven't seen some YouTube videos of that happening, you can check that out. And then you go, but hang on, I watched a aircraft, tailwheel aeroplane doing wheelies down the water. Well, yes, that's because they're not touching the brakes, and they're also doing it very, very carefully. But when you put the whole wheel in, it's just going to add like a big anchor and flip the aircraft over. So making sure that when we do that process, we're going to identify that we are downwind for a water landing, gear up for water landing, confirming gear up on the wing, gear up on the indicator, gear up in the mirrors. All right. So there's always a process there. And it's not just for when you're doing training and when you're doing endorsement. It's got to be all the time, guys. All right. This is why that diligence in confirming the gear position is just crucial. It only takes one mistake to just ruin your day. All right. So overall, remember that these gear up landings are often because of distraction, a break in a cycle, break in your checklist, something's interrupted you. All right. So be careful. Always confirm the gear position via the lever, the light indicators, the mirrors, any other markings or signage or poles or whatever else that you've got that can tell you that everything's where it's supposed to be. Do your checklist properly, deploy the gear, let it come out. Do your puff checks on final, and always do your checks in your seaplanes. Ensure that the gear is up for the water, down for land. And as I did with Izzy the other day, we did it on downwind. Every flap setting we did another gear check. And I've got absolutely no issues with that whatsoever. It is not too much. It's not over the top at all. All right, guys. So hopefully that will be a little bit of food for thought and helps you with the operations that you're doing. Just remember, whether you're flying retractable gear, amphib, gear awareness, it's got to be that top priority. You don't want to be adding to the list of those that have. All right, got any stories to share or any issues you guys have had with some similar things? Let me know. Feel free to share them with me on Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, or of course you can email me, info@TrentRobinsonAviation.com.au. Please, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe as well. Leave a 5-star review on Instagram or Apple Podcast. And if you're on Apple, a written review would be fantastic. It will help other aviators just like you to find the podcast. And of course, you can share it on your own social media, or if you see questions being asked on online forums, feel free to share your favorite episode so others can get some benefit from it as well. All right, everybody. That is it. I am back into another week here in Darwin, some more instructor training and instrument flying and things. So look forward to sharing that with you. Until next time, please stay safe, blue skies, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.